Hello and welcome to today's webinar on the future of sourcing, where I'm delighted to be joined by Thomas Jajeh and David Vincent. Thomas is the Chief Digital Officer at the Randstad Sourceright, and David is the Managing Director at Randstad Sourceright for the EMEA region. Guys, it's so great to see you again. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and we really enjoyed the last show that we did before Christmas. I think it was our highest grossing from an audience perspective. Of course, we don't charge for this, but you will be worthy recipients of the CXC Award and Oscars, so they're in the post. But guys, thanks ever so much. And of course, thank you very much to your audience for joining. We really appreciate it. So we're going to be discussing the future of sourcing today. And it struck me when we were preparing for today's webinar that there's probably never been a better time to be involved in talent acquisition, talent management, recruitment, staffing, human capital advisory. The list goes on, how we might describe our businesses and describe ourselves. David, do you think that's a fair assessment, or is it, as I always do, does it boil it down to a rather simple term?
It's a very positive take on life, which is good. I like that. But no, I think there's kind of two ends of that. I think, aren't there? Opposite ends of the spectrum there. So, from a perspective in terms of how busy everything is at the moment. Last year, I think everybody involved in talent acquisition was super busy. It's probably the busiest year that most individuals had for some time. So, that makes it exciting. I think that brings new innovation to fore. It brings a new dynamism to the market, which is good for everybody, I think. On the opposite end of that scale, we know that there's a huge talent scarcity at the moment. So trying to find people and retain people in the business is really hard. So yes, it's good that it's really busy. It's fun. That's creating innovation and change, but it's really hard work at the moment. And I think lots of people are definitely kind of they're coming to 2022 and they're definitely feeling that it's going to be another busy year. So yeah, look, I think it's good all in all, but I think it's hard work as well. So, but that's okay.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Thomas, what's your take on this rather simplistic question?
Yeah, I think I would agree with David. It's been a very busy year. I think talent acquisition has made it to the boardrooms of nearly all large companies, and we'll talk about our talent trends reports in a minute. And I think one of the well, it's not so surprising after all, but one of the astonishing findings was that actually while everybody was busy like all the time, only 45% of the people actually participating in the report had the feeling they're creating strategic impact for their company. And the reason is that basically firefighting, what David was saying, we need 5 people here, we need this person, this purple squirrel there. This firefighting mode has become the full-time job, and time. There was very little time for really strategic HR initiatives, and that's why we had in this report, I think it was the lowest value ever to that question, where talent acquisition leaders said, "Hey, how much strategic value do I add to my company?" And we never had a value lower than 45%.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. And I think that's quite telling. I think that there's a real trend of that in the report. We'll talk about it in a minute, but. People were clearly very busy. I think everybody had a clear view in terms of what they thought were the key strategic elements that they had to hit. But having the bandwidth to be able to do that, I think, proved really difficult last year.
Yeah, I think that's fair comment, guys. And one of the things I want to come on to in a few minutes is a term that I've borrowed from the financial markets, which is VUCA, which is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And although the picture is rosy, I think for those of us involved in staffing, recruitment, human capital advisory, there's certainly headwinds that we're all facing, and we'll detail those in a few minutes and get your view on that. So, David, if I can come over to you, what are the main trends that you guys seen in your talent trends report at a local and global level? What would you care to share with our audience?
Yeah, so I guess I'd caveat that with saying it's a big report and there's an awful lot in there. So definitely worth taking a look at that. I think there's 54, 55 pages in there. So there's a lot of data. So I think we'll share a link at the end, I think, Connor, won't we? But definitely worth taking a look at. But I think, unsurprisingly, one of the common themes there was that people were having to deal with huge talent scarcity at the moment. And I think, people have taken quite innovative, quite imaginative approaches to be able to deal with that. And I guess we've kind of boiled that down into kind of, I guess, three different areas. So one is kind of how do you manage your talent acquisition? What do you have to do to actually be attractive to people and to kind of bring people into the organisation? Then it's around kind of how you actually deal with that overriding talent experience. How do you engage with your people more? How do you engage with your candidates more? And then the final part really kind of, I guess, really is kind of looking at what you can do with your own people in terms of refreshing the skill set within your business, and enabling people to step up and gain new skills and so on and so forth. But I think there's some really interesting points we touched on a moment ago about the fact that it's the lowest mark that we've seen for since we've been doing the report in terms of how strategic the talent acquisition leaders were feeling that they could be last year. And I think that, again, is just a product of how busy they were. But I think one of the interesting things for me was we looked at what were the kind of top three things that were attracting candidates to organisations. And number one came out at onboarding bonuses, so giving people bonuses when they joined the organisation. But the second one was flexibility, okay, and the third one was compensation. So it's incredible, I think, now that we're seeing flexibility being more important to candidates than compensation. Compensation is still there, but it's ranking below that flexibility piece. I think that for me is a critical point. And we know that if there's a job advert which talks about the ability to work remotely, that gets 2.5 times as many applicants as one that doesn't. Yeah, so that's a critical element for us now, and there's no doubt about that in that whole acquisition piece.
Well, David, that last statistic there is fascinating to me, because anecdotally, that's something we've found within our own organisation. Yeah. We're in my day job at CXC, we're a fully remote organisation in Europe, right? And but we do get together occasionally, as companies probably should and like to do. Yeah. But we've had a number of candidates turn us down. They've just point blank refused to even come and do once a quarter, once every 6 months sort of meetings. It's a really fascinating time. And now, that could be me, it could be our employer brand, it could be who knows. But I'll try not to be too critical about it. But that's a really interesting statistic from your report, David. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and anecdotally, we're definitely seeing that clients that are prepared to offer more flexibility. And I think it's important to understand that flexibility doesn't just mean working from home. Actually, I think it's an important point to make. So I think people now, they've worked from home for the last couple of years. Yeah, they've managed their own time. They've managed when they start work. They've managed when they finish, and they perhaps are working perhaps not the normal standard hours that they were previously. And I think people now expect to have that flexibility. So when we talk about flex, it's not just working from home. It's being able to manage your own time and manage your own output. But we've definitely seen where clients have stipulated that they want workers in the office certain days of the week. Yep, the number of applications we get drops off dramatically, and trying to get people to accept those roles is much more difficult than where organisations are prepared to offer a much higher degree of flexibility.
David, just a thought occurred, and it's probably dangerous when we're live like this to turn my thoughts into questions. But as a talent advisory organisation, I know we've got many service lines, of course. But when you say to your clients, listen, the job response flow is diminished because you're not offering flexible working, do your clients sit up and listen and go, well, okay, maybe let's change the conversation here or the approach?
Yeah, so I think that's another interesting point actually from the report, because I think now most talent acquisition professionals accept that they've got to drive their business and their function based on data. Yeah, so 73% of the people that we spoke to were looking at investing in data analytics and data insights. And I think when we're having those conversations with our clients, we would expect to take data to back that up. Yeah, so we'd expect to take data in terms of response rates on adverts. We'd expect to take data around the response rate from candidates around flexibility and so on and so forth. So when you've got the data to back it up, it's very difficult to argue against that, isn't it? And I think, fortunately, most of the clients that we work with, we've got a strong enough relationship where we're seen as a trusted advisor that they typically will take that on board.
Thanks, David. Thomas, what's your take on the Randstad's Talent Trends report? Anything you'd care to share with the audience that jumps out?
Yeah, I think we've addressed probably the most significant pattern that we saw this year. What we could do is we could extend we've focused very much on flexibility, but if you actually look that the expectation of talents have changed in general, and that's beyond flexibility. Flexibility is probably the biggest driver, but there are other things around personal career development. People want to create an impact. They want to have the feeling that there's an authentic impact of the authentic interest of the company, that they really care about the individual. And it's not just a value proposition, right? Like, you can put things on a poster and then not act according to it. You will see the churn. So if we look at the millennial generation, and they're probably around 50% of our workforce, and the needs for this generation, they have significantly changed to what we saw 20 years ago or 10 years ago even, where you had more the need for safety and for compensation high, and that's still there. Everybody wants to make a good living, but I think other factors play a major role now, and companies are addressing this, and it starts with basically diversity and inclusion, and all the different types of diverse hiring, where companies put loads of effort into nowadays. But then also, the people are getting more obsessed with the talent experience in general. We're looking at optimizing application journeys. Like in the past, we had loads of companies in the world where sometimes candidates didn't even get a reply, and I think that's a no-go in the current time, because everybody recognizes that a candidate is also a potential consumer, or somebody that would buy products from this brand, and you can't differentiate the consumer brand anymore from the employer brand, basically.
Yeah, I think that purpose piece, Thomas, is really important, isn't it? I think we definitely see candidates that they want to feel that they've got an attachment to the purpose of the organisation that they're going to work for now. And I think we've definitely seen more clients putting more effort into articulating what their purpose is, and spending more time kind of articulating that to the candidates during the onboarding process.
I think the next topic we wanted to tackle was the developments in the labour market. We saw some, that there are constantly changing labor markets. We saw IR35, SOW in Germany, how freelancers are engaged. We have certain trends in California and in the US in general. How do you see the labor market developing, and then what does it mean for the staffing industry?
Yeah, I'll take the UK piece around the IR35, Thomas, and I'll let you chime in on some of the freelance piece. But I think it's been interesting with the IR35 piece. Obviously, it got delayed for a year because of COVID, but we've definitely seen that that's had an impact in terms of the demand for services from our clients. I think we've definitely seen an uptick in terms of statement of work. Statement of work now forms a core part of any contingent outsource that we're talking to clients about at the moment, and I think that's directly driven through the IR35 legislation that came into force. And I think that's good, though. I think that means that we're now getting to a point where clients are taking a much more strategic view over the whole of their resourcing piece. They're looking at what their permanent staff can do, but they're looking at that in conjunction with their contingent workforce, whether that be I guess traditional temps or individuals engaged through a statement of work setup. So I think it definitely is having an impact, but in my mind, it's pretty positive at the moment when you take that example.
Yes, thanks, Thomas. So just really wanted to determine how the impact of legislation, Thomas, is really impacting on organizations' ability to engage or willingness to engage freelancers or independent workers?
Yeah, and I think I started with, well, the impact is, I think, quite big, and it's not necessarily only positive at the moment. I think a lot of the governments and the legislation aims to protect the let's say the less well paid freelancers, so the people that are dependent on marketplaces, like you look at Uber and co-employment risks and platforms like Deliveroo, where the people actually depend on the platform giving them work, and the platform defining basically how much they can earn. They define where they can work and when they can work. And I understand that need for protection, and I think everybody in the industry is supportive, and we have a certain code of conduct. I think there's a huge proportion of freelancers that are freelancers by choice, that are making very good hourly rates, that are deciding on which customers, given professional white collar workers, given the talent scarcity that we see at the moment in the market. Those people are dictating their own rates, they're deciding on their own clients, and they often fall under the same legislation. There's not enough differentiation today. So even if you are a very highly qualified, SAP R3 consultant, and you run a project with a large corporate customer, you run the risk of co-employment if you're there longer for 12 months and if you're working embedded in a team, for example. And I think I would hope for governments and legislation to be a little bit more differentiative. While we want to protect the people that need protection, we want to enable the people that want to do this as a business, right? And I think it's a bit too restrictive, how I see the development at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with your analysis, Thomas, because if we look at some of the reports over the years from staffing industry analysts, Ardent Partners, some of the recent reports that have come out from Upwork and some of the other talent marketplace platforms, pretty much all of them are saying that the trend is moving towards more variable cost or freelancer type workers as opposed to permanently employed people. And that desire for workers to be freelancers, or at least have the option to freelancers, I think is to be welcomed. But at the same time, I feel that governments are making the labour market much more rigid and less flexible. So in short, you've really got a dichotomy there between the growth of freelancing, people wanting to be freelancing, organisations maybe no longer wanting a fixed cost employment model, wanting a more variable cost engagement model. Yet you've got things like IR35 and the DBA legislation, which obviously is a pilot state in Netherlands, almost making that labour market more rigid and less flexible. So you've got this push and pull, which I think is unfortunate.
Yeah, totally. And I think it goes back to what we said before in the Talent Trends report. And I think that's not recognized enough. And you have been arguing now from a company perspective that want to be more flexible on the cost side. But I think you could argue also from the talent side. And as I already said, talents are seeking for more flexibility. They're more likely to take risks. The need for safety and security for many young people is not as big as it was for younger people in previous generations. And therefore, they want to create impact. They want to pick when they work where. They want to work on interesting projects or personal development. So we're not giving them, with these rigid regulations, we're not giving them the opportunity to grow their own career in the way they want to grow their career. And I think the governments are still trying to, they're often seeing this as a way to reduce costs and more flexibility and stuff like that. And they don't necessarily acknowledge that the needs of the people have changed.
I think that's fair. David, what's your take? Any thoughts or comments in relation to those points?
I think it's interesting. So I agree with everything that's been said, but we are seeing an increase in demand for non-permanent staff, across the remit, whether that be SAW, statement of work, or whether it be contingent or freelance or whatever. We're definitely seeing that demand increasing, and I think that's partly driven by the supply. In that, there's this demand for flexibility, and kind of people are less wanting to commit to a kind of full-time role now. So we're definitely seeing that increase. But I think, I said when you dropped off, Connor, I think what's encouraging at the moment is that the non-permanent element of the workforce is being considered alongside the permanent element of talent acquisition organisations now. I think they see the contingent piece as a strategic part of their overall workforce, and that for me is a positive. I think that's a good step in the right direction. I think certainly we need to balance out some of this piece that we're kind of seeing at the moment in terms of legislation and the demand and so on. But I think we will end up getting there, because that's clearly the way the market's going to go.
Yeah, I think that's fair comment, David and Thomas. And guys, if we look at the Great Resignation, I was going to call it the so-called Great Resignation, but I think we debated that the last time, so I'll just call it the Great Resignation, as it's more commonly known. What, if any, impact is that having on the hiring organisations that your company is working with, gents?
Yeah, I think if I look across EMEA, I think US is probably a slightly different scenario. But if I look across EMEA, I think the impact of that is dwarfed by the impact of the increase in demand for roles. Yeah, so there's a much higher demand now, and that's what's causing the shortage. It's not, in my opinion, that's what's causing the shortage. It's not that we are seeing a few more people resigning, but then we've got 2 years backed up in terms of people not moving. So I don't think it's dramatically different. But yeah, look, there's no doubt there's a talent scarcity at the moment, but that for me is more about the demand for new roles than the supply suddenly changing. There's elements in the economy where that might be different. So I think Brexit had a bit of an impact in some roles in the UK, certainly. And I think if you look at the US, I think they obviously saw a lot of people leaving, kind of taking early retirement, and that clearly had a fairly significant impact in the US. But yeah, it's a demand issue more than anything, I think, across the EMEA, I would say.
Thanks, David. Thomas?
I think there's one other element, and I'm not sure because I don't have data that proves it, but my feeling is that HR was in firefighting mode throughout COVID. We had huge changes in how we work together. People have been together in offices, they have been engaging socially, they've had lunch together, they've been meeting. Then we have a change to a remote work culture where people that, some people are not married, some people don't have children, they sit alone in their apartment, they work on their computer all day long, the engagements with their colleagues that was important for them in the past is not there anymore. And there's very little coping mechanisms and very little compensation for these social problems. Then at the same time, you see, because of the scarcity of talent, may it be because of the net news or because other people leaving, you see salary rates going up extremely in some markets, 10, 20, 30%. If HR and the company doesn't have strong ties anymore with these people, and they don't see, why would I stay with this company, right? Why would I want to work for Randstad Sourceright? What's in for me? And they lose this connect, and you become more a transactional person that just does the work that is assigned to them. Then why not leaving to another company for a 15% higher salary, right? Like, I think if there's no social or very little social commitment towards a specific company, then salary is a big issue. And with the current salaries in the market, I don't know if that's sustainable or not, but I think we all have seen in our teams that people are leaving the company and then they're getting offered higher salaries out there. And I think that talents know this. So I think we have to work on keeping talent engaged, being empathic leaders, staying close to your team, and really caring. This is not just a slogan on a website, right? This is, you have to be really caring day by day when you work with your people, and then you might have a chance to encounter this.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way of looking at this topic, Thomas, and I think there's a lot of truth in what you've just said there, that social cohesion point. And if we think back to that VUCA piece, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity that currently exists in the global labour market, I think the wage or salary inflation is adding to the complexity here. It's adding to the complexity around, do you offer a signing bonus? If so, how much is it? Do you counter offer your team when they're leaving? How much is that? Is it double? Is it treble? I mean, we're hearing this anecdotally, guys. You probably see it every day, particularly you, David, in your business. But David, specifically in relation to wage or salary inflation, what are you seeing in the marketplace, and what in your view can be done to potentially solve this issue or problem, or reduce the complexity around it?
It's interesting, actually. I was reading something from LinkedIn actually yesterday, and they were saying that this year, so looking at 2022 only, they across the major markets, they'd only seen increases in salaries in line with inflation. Yeah, which I was surprised by, if I'm honest, because that's not. It certainly doesn't feel like that anecdotally when you're talking to people who are getting, significant uplifts in terms of their base salaries now. I do think that I think it'll depend on which part of what sectors we're looking at. I think you look at technology and so on and so forth. I think those salaries are going to remain fairly high. I think we will see a softening elsewhere, but I think we've seen crazy salaries, which are not going to be sustainable. Yeah, so that's got to pop at some point. Yeah, but I think there'll be some exceptions around that. I think technology is likely to be one of those.
I mean, just structurally, that doesn't work. What's happening at the moment in this area? I mean, we see whole industries that have long-term commitments towards their clients, and like let's say the automotive industry, the suppliers, and as the salary increases year by year at the moment are higher than their margins. So I mean, how that it is not sustainable. You probably have to do it at the moment, but ultimately, if you can't get your price increase on the other side, then how will this work? So I think there's probably a backside of this mountain that once the scarcity problem is sorted out a little bit, and this could take some time, we'll see also people leaving again that are on very high salaries.
Do you think, guys, that the scarcity is more of a wider structural problem in terms of how we're educating the youth or the folks of today, in terms of, are we preparing people for the new world, or for the current world, for the future? What's your thoughts on that, James?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a gap there. I think you look at I think it's fairly well documented around the kind of the STEM piece, technology specifically. I think we certainly, if I look at the UK, we've been behind the curve on that. There's no doubt about that. And I think we're feeling, because there's suddenly been this acceleration in demand for technology skills over the last couple of years, we just don't have the people to keep up with that. So yeah, I completely agree. I think that's a big gap, and that's why we're seeing a lot more organisations getting involved in upskilling their incumbent workers, or they're engaging new workers and skilling them as they come into the business. And we're definitely seeing a proliferation of that, certainly in the marketplace.
What's your thoughts on that question, Thomas?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to add. I think what's on top happening now is that in scarcity is also often local. So if you probably the global and remote hiring trend. And at the moment, remote work, by the way, hybrid work is mainly in-country hybrid work. It's rarely cross-border global, if you're not a global company anyway. So I think that will change. So hires will be more global, and companies will be even more open to global hiring. And then what we see in countries with high populations and where education is still a little bit behind, some of the African countries, some of the APEC countries, we see heavy investments into education, early careers, training programs directly after university to bring to train up those people, because there are more people that could actually grow a career in tech than there are in the UK, because the UK is already pretty much settled in their education pyramid.
Yeah, the borderless hiring piece. I hadn't actually thought to include that in that FUCA piece, but when I always thought about borderless hiring up until quite recently, folks, I was thinking, well, this could actually solve some of the talent scarcity problems, and it could allow for talent or labour arbitrage. So you get, I guess, the best talent at lower cost. But what I'm hearing from our colleagues and partners and clients in places like India and Poland, which were typically the main hubs for this sort of remote knowledge worker, is that because there's global inflation in all markets in terms of the price inflation, so for goods, services, oil, cars, etc., pretty much everything, that's impacting on wage or salary inflation in those countries, but also because of this labour arbitrage piece, there's increased competition now. So, the smarter companies might have been going to Poland to take advantage of 50% labour arbitrage compared to the UK. But that's no longer as easy now because the people in Poland are going, well, hang on a second, why am I not worth the same as the guy or the girl down in central London that is also a SAP R3 developer or whatever the greatest thing is? What's your take on that, guys? Again, I boil things down to their simplest terms, but that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing that in pockets. Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing that as you get more and more international companies using Polish labour to fill some of their roles, we're definitely seeing wage inflation there. Absolutely, there's no question about that. And that's not new. That's been happening for a long time. But we've definitely seen that spike over the last 6 to 8 months, I'd say. I think what will happen is I think there'll be a next generation in terms of outsourcing locations. Africa, for example, is getting talked about quite a bit at the moment, and I think we'll see some of that certainly, and I think we'll see some organisations involved in outsourcing activities out to a number of the African countries at the moment. I think that's likely to increase because there's going to come a point where that wage arbitrage outweighs the convenience factor. I think, if I'm honest.
Yeah, but I also think that the drivers will change for outsourcing. If your driver is wage arbitrage, then sooner or later countries like Poland or even Portugal are probably not your go-to countries anymore. Even India, I think the salaries have kind of quadrupled in the last 5 years. But if your problem is scarcity and you can't fill your roles and you can't get your projects done, I actually don't care if I pay a person in Poland as much as I pay a person in Berlin or in London. I just want the skill, and if I have availability in Poland, then no, I don't have the wage arbitrage, but I at least have the person, maybe that I can run my projects with. So I think since the labor market is getting more and more global, and this is now looking 20 years in the future, I think what we will see is we will have a certain price tag for a certain skill. And then probably, for fairness reasons, there will be kind of, and that price tag is the same all across the globe, right? Like a data scientist with 5 years maturity earns X, right? But then you have your location-specific markups, basically, that says, okay, if you're in London, you're a 1.5, and if you're in Poland, you're a 1.2. So, this is how we can probably see it, because the cost of living in those countries are, of course, a little bit cheaper, and then therefore maybe they're willing to take a little bit hit in the salary. But ultimately, we're seeing this all. Like when I started with outsourcing 15 years ago, we had a significant labor arbitrage between the first country we did was the Ukraine. Well, we all know what's happening at the moment, but the first country we did 10 years ago or 15 years ago was the Ukraine. And the labor arbitrage Germany to Ukraine was approximately 5 times the salary that we had in Germany. 5 times the salary we had in Ukraine, we saw the developer salary in Germany. And like in the end, last year, it was pretty much even. There was no big difference. And then if you then look at convenience, yes, then I would probably prefer to pay the same salary and I can have the team together at one location. But if I don't have a choice, then it's mainly about getting the right people.
Guys, I know we're talking about the future now, and thank goodness, because the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity that scares the bloody hell out of people. But David, I think you're on to something there on Africa as a talent pool and that final frontier. I think if we're honest, there's probably been a degree of unconscious and conscious bias with regards to Africa as a talent pool, not from us here as guests or anything like that, but I think it's a rich market to get talent, particularly in the IT space. If you look at countries such as Kenya, Rwanda, Nigeria, South Africa, and a whole host of others, they've got really excellent technology universities that are often overlooked. And there's a great company, I think, headquartered out of New York called Andela, Andela. They're a platform stroke marketplace, as best as I can understand it. I want to come on to marketplaces shortly, guys, but they're really working with African countries and universities to create that future and current talent pool. And I think there's something in that. Thomas, I like your point and almost that there's a fixed price. And I hate to use this analogy, Thomas, but what can I say? I'm a reductionist, right? So if I think about the price of a barrel of oil, right, it's largely the same in most countries, right? You got your Brent crude, which is X. You got your West Texas, which is Y. And the same principles could probably be applied to data scientist A, data scientist B, data scientist C, and that would give a degree of price certainty and potential competition in the marketplace. So I think we'll watch that space eagerly. I'll probably get into trouble for comparing people with barrels of oil, but what can I say? I was a contract recruiter at one time in my life. So, but guys, moving on, I want to touch on the RPO sector, David, and really, I've got some questions for you in relation to that. Pretty much every enterprise or partner that I'm speaking with, all they want to know is, can you do RPO? What does it look like? What's the business case? What are the return on investments? What's the future of it? And I wanted to really get your steer on this, David, for the benefit of our audience, for anyone that's thinking about embarking on an RPO journey. I suppose, for the uninitiated, David, or those about to go on the journey, what the hell is RPO and what are the key benefits and some takeaways from a business case building perspective?
Yeah, so RPO is recruitment process outsourcing, but that's a pretty broad spectrum, and I think we've definitely seen that shift in the last 12 months. I think typically when we talk about RPO within Randstad Sourceright, we have relatively large, generally kind of enterprise type clients where we will essentially pick up all or part of their recruitment process for them, and we in the normal run of things, we typically put people on site who would face off to the client, provide talent advisory services to the client, and then we have a team of individuals that go out and source candidates for that client in the marketplace. So that's been a kind of traditional RPO setup. What we've seen though recently, and I think this is why there's been such an increase in demand for RPO services, is that because customers have seen such a huge increase in the demand for talent, they've just not had the capacity to be able to deal with that internally. So they turn to RPO providers to increase that agility and increase the ability of their team to go out into the market and source candidates. So, for me at the moment, I think if you speak to most customers, they'll talk about agility as being a kind of a key driver for them. Yeah, clearly. Price is a driver as well. We're talking to procurement specialists, but I think when we're talking to clients, we talk to them about the fact that we can provide that agility, we can provide expertise in terms of talent engagement, in terms of the way that we engage the market. We talk to them about how we actually bring a consumer grade experience to candidates as they go through that recruitment process. And I think the other thing that's critical at the moment is that there's a real diversity in terms of technologies in the recruitment space. There's hundreds and hundreds of different pieces of technology, and we test through Thomas's team thousands of pieces of tech every single year. And most of those we would never deploy because they're not good enough, not fit for purpose for what we want to do. But there are some amazing pieces of tech there, and by us going through and kind of testing and so on, it does mean that we can provide some real market-leading technology to our clients, and that does a number of things in terms of, one, increases the experience for all of the stakeholders in that recruitment process. It helps to drive efficiencies, helps to drive speed, and so on and so forth. And all of that's critical at the moment in terms of engaging the best talent in the marketplace.
Thank you, David. Really appreciate it. And Thomas, I want to come on to this concept of talent on demand and talent marketplaces specifically. There's been a proliferation of entrants into the talent marketplace sector that are essentially platform companies that want to match opportunity with a defined talent pool or an undefined talent pool. And my question really is this: do you think those talent marketplaces have a role to serve in solving some of the problems around talent acquisition? And secondly, do you think that those marketplace/talent platforms will disintermediate, I suppose, companies like your own?
I think yes and no to both questions somehow. So I think the talent marketplaces do have a role. But as you already mentioned, I think there are at least as many talent marketplaces out there as other HR tech solutions, right? Like there's a talent marketplace for everything. There's, in a certain region for a certain skill set, and then you have another one in a different region for a different skill set. There are thousands of marketplaces out there. And this, but this wide range of talent marketplaces is very hard to manage for corporations, because they would have to go to 50 different talent marketplaces to basically get all their needs filled. And therefore, it is not very different than what we saw in when MSPs first came up. You had a huge number of suppliers, and talent marketplaces are in fact just suppliers, and companies are not able to manage all of them. So yes, I think they will play a role, because if you think of it as a value proposition, it's easier to engage talent with a very specific value proposition than with a very broad value proposition. So if you build a network, one of my favorite platforms in the US is the Mom Project, with the narrative around you help part-time working moms to get into jobs, and you build this community and you nurture this community, then you can really get this population onto your platform engaged. While if you're just a general marketplace like Upwork, where part-time working moms wouldn't play a big role as a community, it's harder to engage with this community. So there's a reason why there are so many, but it's very hard to engage with so many. So what we will see is that there will be probably a layer of aggregation, and I believe that there will be services companies that will manage these aggregation layers on behalf of the client. And in this aggregation layer, these aggregation layers will then probably connect to the clients and will allow customers to tap into multiple or all of these marketplaces in the end. So I think, yes, they certainly have a role. I think no, in terms of we cannot have all of these marketplaces communicate with all of the customers. That is just inconvenient for the customer and very confusing.
I think what I'd add to that as well, Thomas, is I think from a candidate perspective at the moment, there's we talked about it, huge candidate scarcity, and candidates at the moment, they expect to get a really personalised service, and it's difficult to do that through a generic platform. And I think that's where talent acquisition team or an RPO team really comes into their own, because they can we can design a platform which tailors the experience to the candidate depending on what job they're applying to and kind of what they are as an individual, and clearly we can then engage them personally. And I think that's critical at the moment, and that's going to continue to be the case for a little while, I would say.